American Expansion, Section 1 with Ms. Lashi. American Imperialism. American imperialism occurred in the late 1800s and early 1900s. It is characterized by the expansion of U.S. territory with the use of military force and economic diplomacy. So military force would be using the U.S. Navy or Army, usually the Navy in these instances, and economic diplomacy is when you would put economic or financial pressure on a country to do something that you want them to do. America's sphere of influence. The sphere of influence that America had extended as far as its military, political, cultural, economic, or social reach extended. Essentially, what sphere of influence is how far Americans' policies or influence could reach. How far did it extend? Were they able to influence economic policy in China because of their military power? Were they able to influence economic or military policy or political policy in Central America because of the U.S. military and other aspects as well? But it's as far as things that the United States is doing has influence on. Missionaries. Missionaries were people who sought to convert people to Christianity. They traveled to places like Africa, Latin America, Asia, and Hawaii. Missionaries played a very special aspect in the expansion of America's sphere of influence because they would go into these countries on a religious mission, but then they also served as delegates for the United States and helped the United States to gain some political, social, or cultural influence in these foreign countries where the missionaries were going in. So kind of like help the United States get a little foothold in a country where they might not have been able to get one in before because of the missionaries or the Christians who are going in trying to convert people to Christianity. Hawaii. Hawaii is an island chain in the Pacific Ocean. Businessmen had invested in sugar and pineapple plantations in Hawaii. At the time, Hawaii was an independent country with a monarchy. So plantations are essentially very large farms. A monarchy is a form of government where you have a king or a queen at the head of it. If you look to the right, this is Queen Liliuokalani, and she would be the last queen of Hawaii before the Hawaiian monarchy was overthrown. Sanford B. Dole. Sanford B. Dole was an American businessman in Hawaii. He wanted to overthrow the monarchy and have Hawaii annexed by the United States. He helped to organize American businessmen and overthrow the monarchy. So annexed means to be added on. So he wanted Hawaii to be added on to the United States, to become part of the United States. And overthrowing the monarchy, that means to get rid of the monarchy and replace it with something else. Hawaii becomes a republic. The United States government did not want to annex Hawaii after its monarchy was overthrown. Hawaii became an independent country and Sanford B. Dole became its president. So Sanford B. Dole, the person who organized the overthrow of the monarchy, is not successful in getting the United States to annex Hawaii, and so they have to establish some sort of government. So he becomes the president and they remain an independent country for a few more years after this. The United States annexes Hawaii. After the Spanish-American War broke out, the United States agreed to annex Hawaii. In 1898, Hawaii became a U.S. territory. Sanford B. Dole became its first governor. Hawaii served as an important refueling station for the U.S. Navy in the Pacific Ocean. It also helped to protect world trade. So we haven't gotten to it yet, but the United States fights this war in the Caribbean. And then they see the need to have Hawaii as a refueling station and to help them give a place to have a stepping stone in the Pacific to help establish their authority. So they see the need to annex Hawaii, so they do it, even though at first they're like, no, I don't think so. We don't want to annex Hawaii. So they end up doing it. So Hawaii serves as a refueling station, a place where the U.S. Navy could bring its ships to get gas and fuel and supplies for the men, like food, and help to protect world trade. Cuba. Cuba was part of what was left of the Spanish Empire. They exported sugar and tobacco to the United States. The U.S. raised tariffs. This caused a tax on sugar and tobacco imported to the United States. The tariffs resulted in unemployment in Cuba. Many Cubans were not happy with Spanish rule. Okay, so a tariff is when you place a tax on an item that's being imported into a country. So if sugar is being imported into the United States, the US puts a tariff or tax on it, so it costs more. You have to pay a tax for it. And so because of that, a lot of people weren't purchasing sugar or tobacco coming from Cuba, and that severely hurt the Cuban economy. Unemployment is when people don't have jobs, and people were unhappy with Spanish rule in Cuba because they were being ruled by Cuba. The Spanish Empire had shrunk dramatically by this time, and Cuba was one of the last strongholds that it had in the Caribbean. Jose Marti. Jose Marti was a Cuban exile living in America. He went back to Cuba in 1895 and declared it independent from Spain. Spain used its army to end the rebellion, and Jose Marti was killed. Inhumane conditions in Cuba. Spain forced many Cubans into camps where they were exposed to disease and starvation. Many of these people died. U.S. newspapers began to sensationalize the story in order to sell more newspapers. Stretching the truth or lying to sell newspapers is called yellow journalism. So sensationalizing or to sensationalize is to make something seem bigger than it actually is. Now, of course, these are really bad situations that are going on, but the United States blew it up completely out of proportion, made it bigger than it actually was. It was happening on a small scale and not very large, and they made it seem like the entire island of Cuba was experiencing this, even though it was just small sections. It was still a horrific event, and it shouldn't have happened. I would like to point that out, though. Yellow journalism is when newspapers just flat out lie or stretch the truth because they want to make money off of selling the newspaper. And if there's something more extreme being reported, like a war or an attack or something, it's more likely that people are going to stop and buy that newspaper.